Usually, when you pick up a novel, you kind of expect the central conflict to be, well, loud.
Oh, for sure. Like a massive argument or a literal explosion.
Right, exactly. You expect the stakes to be shouted at you from the very first page.
Yeah, people love high-octane drama.
They really do.
Yeah.
But I want you to consider what it would look like if the most terrifying, most agonizing tension in a story came from absolute, suffocating quiet.
Ooh, yeah. That creates a completely different kind of narrative gravity.
It totally does.
Because, a loud conflict pushes you back in your seat, right?
Yeah.
But a quiet one, it pulls you in.
Yeah, it forces you to lean closer just to hear what's, not being said.
Exactly.
So today we're doing a deep dive into a highly anticipated new release. We're looking at the 2025 novella Through the Quiet Wall alongside the author's wider nonfiction essays on human psychology.
And the author is BernsPen, by the way.
Yes, the brilliant BernsPen. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the underlying mechanics of how we heal.
It's such a massive topic.
It really is. We are going to dig into the incredible, almost haunting vibe of this book and the emotional stakes, which are just, they're agonizing.
Truly agonizing.
And the deep psychological themes at play. But, and this is a huge but, we're going to do it all without giving away any of the major plot twists or the ending.
Nope, our lips are sealed.
We want you to remain in total suspense because this is an experience you simply have to resolve for yourself.
Oh, absolutely. And, BernsPen is just an ideal lens for this kind of psychological breakdown.
For sure. For those who might be unfamiliar with his broader work, he is widely known for nonfiction explorations of philosophy, science, and the clinical mechanics of human resilience.
Yeah, books like Divine Algorithm and Decoding Faith.
Yes, so he isn't just a storyteller, right?
Yeah.
He is an observer of the human condition.
He really is. So when he turns his attention to fiction, he brings this very clinical, profound understanding of trauma and connection to the landscape.
He understands the architecture of the mind.
He does, and he builds his characters accordingly.
So let's just lay out the premise he builds here.
Let's do it.
The story follows Henry. And Henry is a deeply traumatized, incredibly isolated man living in a bare, beige apartment.
Beige is the perfect word for it. It's just so lifeless.
It really is. His entire life is this exercise in pure survival routine.
Yeah.
He's stripping away anything that could cause pain.
Which essentially means he's stripping away life itself.
Exactly. And then his entire universe is disrupted when a free-spirited artist named Elena moves in next door.
Such a classic setup, but handled so uniquely.
Right. Honestly, reading this book is it's like peeling an onion where every single layer is a different kind of silence.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Thanks. But it's true, because sometimes that silence is suffocating and terrifying, and other times it is incredibly beautiful.
Which means I think before we can even examine the connection trying to bloom between them, we have to analyze the barrier keeping them apart.
Yes, the literal, physical manifestation of Henry's psychological state.
Right in the center of the apartment.
The peephole.
The peephole.
I know, it's so dark. This is the inherited secret at the core of Henry's existence.
Yeah.
Because this apartment belonged to his mother before, as the text describes it, quote, silence took her.
Such a chilling line.
It really is. And then it belonged to his abusive uncles, who filled the place with noise and shadows. But the origin of this peephole is what really sets the tone.
Yeah, because it wasn't carefully drilled or measured prior.
No, not at all. The text specifically notes it was gouged out with a screwdriver and a dare by an uncle whose breath smelled sour with beer.
That sensory detail just makes my skin crawl.
I know, it's so visceral. And that uncle tells a 9-year-old Henry, quote, men watch, men know.
Oh, man. That phrase, men watch, men know, is literally the foundational trauma that dictates Henry's entire worldview.
It's so messed up.
It is. BernsPen is using that single brutal action to explore how toxic paradigms are passed down.
Right.
Like, that uncle is teaching a vulnerable 9-year-old boy that masculinity and connection are inherently predatory. Exactly. You do not participate in life. You spy on it from the shadows.
You stay hidden.
Because visibility equals vulnerability, and vulnerability equals destruction.
Right. And, I really struggled with the concept of the peephole at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because on paper, a guy with a hidden peephole into a woman's apartment sounds like the setup for a creepy, disturbing thriller.
Oh, totally. You expect a stalker narrative.
Exactly. I braced myself for that.
Yeah.
But reading it, I found myself pitying Henry.
Yeah, it breaks your heart.
It broke my heart. I just didn't understand why he wouldn't just, patch the hole up if looking through it reminded him of his abusers.
See, that contradiction is exactly what BernsPen wants you to wrestle with.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, why do we cling to the things that hurt us? From a psychological perspective, the peephole functions as a tragic safety blanket.
A safety blanket. Wow.
Yeah, because Henry fears that if he seals it up, the absolute silence of his trauma will become unbearable.
Oh, I see.
He would lose his only tether to the outside world, the only thing that makes him feel, tethered to reality at all.
Man. So he didn't ask for this coping mechanism.
No, and he didn't build it.
Right. But it's the only way he knows how to survive the silence of his own mind.
Exactly. So the peephole is this master metaphor for inherited trauma.
It's a brilliant, agonizing device.
It really is, because as a reader, you are constantly aware of this dark secret lurking right behind Henry's bookshelf.
It colors every single thought he has.
It's a masterclass in building tension. I mean, you feel the weight of that unsealed hole just as much as Henry does.
Which brings up the obvious question, right? It's like, how do you disrupt an environment that static?
It's tough.
You have a man locked in a fortress of his own making, terrified of the silence, but even more terrified of breaking it.
Yeah.
And you don't break that kind of stasis with a loud crash.
Yeah.
You do it with a change in the atmosphere.
And that inciting incident is simply the arrival of Elena?
Yes. The contrast she brings is just overwhelming.
And BernsPen uses sensory details to map out that contrast so clinically.
It's amazing, because Henry is basically living in grayscale, right? Just listening to the pipes groan in this forgotten gray building.
Yeah, a totally sterile existence.
And then Elena arrives, and the text says she smells of citrus and turpentine.
Such a vivid scent profile.
She wears linen. She leaves her windows open so the breeze actually moves the stale air in the hallway.
Which Henry probably hasn't felt in years.
Right. She even paints her apartment door this soft green color, quote, like moss after rain.
I love that description.
Me too. And she hums wordless melodies and boils a kettle at noon. It's honestly like watching a black and white movie where suddenly one character is rendered in vivid, breathing color.
Oh, that's spot on. You can literally feel the temperature of the hallway change.
You really can.
Because Elena is undeniably, unapologetically alive. She takes up space.
Which is terrifying for him.
Exactly. She alters her environment rather than just surviving it, which is the exact opposite of what Henry has been trained to do.
Yes. But notice how BernsPen handles Henry's reaction to all of this.
This is where his understanding of human psychology really, really elevates the narrative.
So the moment Henry hears the delivery man whisper Elena's name through the mail slot.
Oh, the scene.
Right. His reaction completely subverts expectations. He stops looking through the people.
It's such a brilliant twist.
It is. He stands near it, sometimes, to remember what it meant to resist. But he refuses to violate her space.
Yes.
By choosing not to look, he takes his very first step toward actual humanity. But I have to admit, as a reader, this drove me crazy in the best way possible.
Well, because it completely shifts the nature of the suspense.
How so?
I mean, a lesser writer would have made the tension about whether Henry would give in to voyeuristic temptation.
Right, like a cheap thriller.
Exactly. They would have played with the morality of spying. But BernsPen bypasses that entirely.
Yeah, he does.
The tension isn't about whether Henry will look through the wall. It's this agonizing, slow-burn suspense of whether Henry will ever be brave enough to step out from behind the wall and let himself be seen.
You have to see how the author handles this dynamic. It is just so delicate.
It's a tightrope walk.
It really is. But it poses a massive logistical problem for the narrative, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because if Henry refuses to look through the wall, and neither of these incredibly scarred people has the emotional vocabulary to articulate their trauma verbally,
right?
How do they actually bridge the physical gap between these two apartments?
Well, they have to rely on a proxy.
A proxy.
Yeah. When people lack the internal tools to process deep emotional stakes, they often project those stakes onto external physical objects.
Oh, I see.
They use the physical world to communicate what the psychological world cannot bear to say.
Wow, okay, so that brings us to the language of broken objects in this book.
Yes, such a beautiful theme.
There is this pivotal scene in the hallway that seems incredibly mundane on the surface.
The mug scene?
Yes, the mug scene. Elena drops a mug. It breaks. It's a white porcelain mug with a faded blue rim.
Right.
And Henry, who normally hides from any human interaction whatsoever, actually steps out of his apartment to help her pick up the shards.
Which is a huge deal for him.
A massive deal. And she mentions that it was already chipped, but it felt right in her hand. And Henry confesses that he has a cracked plate he uses anyway, because, as Elena says, they both like things that are, quote, lived in.
If we look at the clinical mechanics of trauma here, lived in is a profound euphemism for damaged but still worthy of love.
Oh man, that hits hard.
It does, because traumatized individuals often struggle with a core belief that their damage makes them unworthy of connection.
Like they're just broken beyond repair.
Exactly. So by bonding over a broken mug and a cracked plate, Elena is showing Henry that broken things still have purpose.
They still hold value.
They do, and it establishes a pattern.
It really does.
Yeah.
Like later, she knocks on his door to borrow his kettle, and she intentionally chooses to drink from his cracked mug.
Yeah.
And then even later on, she brings over a spool of deep green thread to stitch a torn piece of fabric.
That scene is so quiet, but so loud.
Right. She tells Henry she chose thread because it is, quote, fragile, but it holds things together.
It's incredibly poetic.
It is, but, I kind of want to push back on the mechanics of this relationship style.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because in most modern romances, chemistry relies heavily on fast-paced, witty banter.
Oh, sure.
The whole enemies to lovers trope, the constant sharp verbal sparring.
Right, the Gilmore Girls effect.
Exactly. We are so conditioned to view rapid-fire dialogue as proof of connection. But here we have none of that.
None.
So why does stripping away the dialogue make the emotional stakes hit so much harder for the reader?
Because witty banter is often an intellectual shield.
A shield.
Yeah. It's a way of engaging without actually being vulnerable.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
BernsPen strips away the banter to retrain the reader's attention. When you remove the verbal armor, every single micro-action becomes loaded with psychological meaning.
Wow.
By using objects as a proxy, they are testing the waters of rejection with low stakes.
Right, like with the plate.
Exactly. If Henry hands Elena a cracked plate and she throws it away, well, she rejected the plate, not him.
It is a psychological buffer.
Precisely. Elena says at one point, routines are stories, they just take longer to tell.
Ugh, that line.
It is the thesis of their entire dynamic. The shared silence transforms from a punishment into a language of trust.
Routines are stories, they just take longer to tell. That line literally wrecked me.
It's so good.
But, as beautiful as a borrowed kettle is, objects can only establish a baseline of safety.
Very true.
They can't force true vulnerability. At some point, you have to risk the self.
You do.
And in this story, the mechanism that forces them to confront their deepest fears is art.
Yes. Objects provide safety, but art demands revelation.
Oh, I like that.
Because art bypasses the logical defensive parts of the brain and speaks directly to the emotional core, where the trauma actually lives.
That is so true. And the artistic exchanges in this book are just breathtaking.
They really are.
Like when Elena paints an abstract canvas, it's this swirl of faint colors, but deliberate in the center is a hallway, a door, a shadow. And she tells Henry it's about presence, about being near someone you don't quite know. She's essentially painting the feeling of him.
Yes, exactly.
She knows he is there, hovering in the periphery of her life, and she is giving him permission to exist in her reality.
And look at how Henry responds to that.
It's so beautiful.
Right, because he doesn't knock on her door and say, "Thank you for acknowledging me."
He literally can't.
He can't. So what does he do?
He dusts off an old sketchbook,
Yep.
which he hasn't drawn in for years. He actually tore up his old sketchbook because art had become a mirror, and for someone with his past, mirrors were dangerous.
Exactly.
But after seeing her canvas, he sketches her green door at the end of a long, cracked hallway.
Notice the psychological shift there. Art becomes the stand-in for the words they can't say. Henry is terrified of stepping through her door. But by drawing the door at the end of a cracked hallway, he is communicating his desire to bridge the distance.
Oh, that's profound.
He doesn't do it to match her artistic skill, He does it to meet her emotional bid.
Right, and the culmination of this silent dialogue is just devastating.
The note?
The note. Henry slips her a note admitting that her painting of the hallway reminded him of a closet he used to hide in as a kid.
Such a vulnerable admission.
A place that wasn't safe but was his. Now, a typical response would be for Elena to, write back or knock on the door and demand a conversation about his childhood trauma.
Right.
But she doesn't do that at all.
Because demanding a verbal explanation would trigger his defensive instincts instantly.
Right, he would shut down.
Exactly. Instead, she responds in the language they have built. She paints it.
She leaves a hand-carved wooden frame at his door. And inside is a painting of a dim, narrow closet with coats hanging like ghosts. But in the center, there is a child's hand reaching toward a crack of light. She reaches into his darkest, most isolated childhood memory, and she literally paints light into it.
This illustrates such a profound clinical point about empathy and what it means to be truly seen.
Yeah.
Henry has spent his whole life watching from the shadows, convinced that if anyone truly looked at him, they would only see the damage his uncles left behind.
That he was just broken.
Right. But Elena doesn't just see his current isolated self. Through her art, she perceives the terrified 9-year-old boy, and she offers him a hand.
It's a profound act of psychological validation.
And it is.
It is so beautifully healing. But as a reader, while you are taking in this gorgeous, tender exchange of art and trauma healing, you are simultaneously sweating bullets.
Oh, absolutely sweating bullets.
Because there's a giant looming threat to all of this progress.
The architecture of the apartment hasn't changed.
No.
The wall is still there. The peephole is still there.
Yes. The climax setup in this book is almost unbearable.
It really is.
Henry has this terrifying secret. No matter how much they connect over tea and rainstorms, no matter how many gorgeous, vulnerable paintings they exchange.
That gouged peephole is still hiding behind the bookshelf.
Yes. It's like a ticking time bomb of intimacy. Every single beautiful, tender moment they share just makes the secret of the wall loom larger and heavier.
It builds so much anxiety.
It does. And it begs the question, can a relationship built on such a dark foundation actually survive the light?
That is the central tension driving the final act. And it is excruciating because BernsPen has made you care so deeply about Henry's fragile progress.
You just want him to be okay.
Right. But Henry realizes that to truly be with Elena, to step out of the silence and be quote-unquote real, he has to confess.
He has to.
He has to reveal the darkest, most shameful artifact of his past, knowing full well it might destroy the only beautiful connection he has ever experienced.
And we are purposefully withholding how that plays out.
Oh yeah, we are not spoiling that.
You absolutely must experience the ending firsthand. You need to find out for yourself if Henry confesses, if he seals the wall, and how Elena reacts to the physical manifestation of his past.
The suspense is so well crafted, it will keep you up until the early hours of the morning, I guarantee it.
It really will.
It is a stunning exploration of a very complex question. Is love simply about finding a safe harbor where no one asks about your scars?
Or is it about the terrifying risk of choosing someone with a deeply complicated past and bringing those scars into the light?
Exactly. Are we willing to love people who are still heavily under construction? That is what BernsPen forces the reader to confront.
So, synthesizing all of this, Through the Quiet Wall is a narrative dedicated to those who have learned to live in silence.
Yeah.
It systematically dismantles the idea that love is the absence of fear. Instead, it posits that love is the active, agonizing decision to stay, even when the fear remains.
Which perfectly echoes the philosophical arguments BernsPen makes in Divine Algorithm, that human resilience isn't about avoiding the cracks in our foundation, but learning how to build something beautiful on top of them.
That's incredible.
He has an incredible analytical range, and it translates beautifully into his fiction.
So if you appreciate this kind of deep psychological storytelling, you should absolutely be looking out for his other highly anticipated release, Morning at Fernando's Road.
Yes. That project offers a different flavor entirely. It explores reality and alternate timelines with the cartographer and a shimmering portal.
Oh, wow.
But at its core, it applies the same rigorous psychological lens to themes of longing and connection.
It sounds fascinating. But before you dive into alternate timelines, you need to confront the wall in this timeline.
Definitely.
And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over something that expands on BernsPen's themes of quiet intimacy.
Let's hear it.
We live in a society that is obsessed with constant digital noise and immediate oversharing.
Oh, absolutely.
We are encouraged to broadcast every minor thought, every inconvenience, every facet of our identities, the literal moment we experience them.
Yep.
But looking at the profound, slow-burn trust built between Henry and Elena through broken mugs and silent art, it makes you wonder.
It does.
By demanding constant loud visibility from each other, are we actually destroying our ability to build true, deliberate intimacy?
Oh, that's a great point.
Right. Does profound connection actually require a foundational silence that modern society simply no longer tolerates?
It's a vital question. I mean, in our rush to be seen by everyone, we might be losing the patience required to be truly understood by anyone.
Wow. Let that sit with you.
Yeah.
I cannot emphasize enough that this is the must-read book of the season.
Without a doubt.
The psychological depth, the agonizing stakes, the sheer poetry of the execution, it was completely unparalleled. Through the Quiet Wall is available now.
Run, don't walk.
Seriously, you need to go grab a copy immediately to experience how Henry and Elena's story concludes. Do not miss out on this masterclass in storytelling. Go get it right now.